version. Notice the next one is, looks like maybe an audiobook. Yeah, e-audiobook. So I'm not going to choose that record. I am going to choose this first record here, Madness of Crowds. So when you are entering a book review, what we prefer is that you get the title as it appears in WorldCat, not from a specific library catalog. It may be the same exact record, but we don't know that at this point. So let's look now at this show more information. And do I know? I still don't really know who the author is at this point. So what I like to do is look at some of the other library catalogs from the area. And I'm going to scroll down to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. I know that this library catalog is the same as my library catalog, which is Primo from Ex Libris. So I'm going to click on the borrow link to see the catalog record from UT. Uh-oh, no results found. So how do I know? This is probably an ebook, and it might or might not be in their catalog some other way. So let's take a look now at another library catalog. And based on your location, your libraries are going to be different. I'm in Toccoa, Georgia, so I'm getting ones from my area. I'm going to look at Clemson. That's the first one here, Clemson University. And let's see what their record says. Okay, so here we go. Here is the cover. Notice that it's the same exact one. So that pretty much tells me that this is the correct author here, which is Murray, Douglas, 1979 dash. So let's go back now to the LC Authority file. Here is the authorized heading. And so this would be the correct author for this book. Now, I know I went rather quickly there. Do you have any questions before we go any further on how to choose the right author?
Was there a reason we didn't click on the author's name in the WorldCat?
You certainly can do that, absolutely. Do you mean right here on the catalog record or just back in WorldCat?
I guess it was back in WorldCat. I just was curious if it gave any information as well. I wasn't sure because I haven't done it before.
This will show you all of the works by this person. So I'm not getting a link to the authority record, but this would help me figure out if I do kind of have the right author based on some of the other works. So I could look at some of these other works and verify that way from another record. That is a good idea, yes. Specifically for this book, though, I would want to make sure that I'm still looking at this correct record for this book. So yeah, good question.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. So the point here on this one is to make sure that you choose this authorized heading. Don't just get Murray, Douglas, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, this is a heading. I found it in the LC Authority file. Well, notice that it says references. So in the Christian Periodical Index, we do use the author's dates for reviews. We don't use them for articles. So some people do get confused over those two. I'm only speaking today about reviews. So we do use dates after the author's name. Sarah, would you mind also putting the link to the manual in the chat as well? You'll see that the manual does have a link, or I'm sorry, a page about the author's names and how we do include dates. Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about here is the title of the book. So let's go back now to our result for this specific book. And just to emphasize the point here of WorldCat and how we choose the title. So the title of this book does have a subtitle. So I'm going to just highlight this so you can see the title here on this page. The Madness of Crowds, space, colon, space. And we say this all the time on the team. That does not follow certain formats. Say, for example, APA. We follow this format for book reviews, which is the OCLC format from WorldCat. So we say it all the time, space, colon, space, but as the editor of book reviews, I can tell you I would be a rich man if I had a dollar for every time someone had title, colon, space. So again, space, colon, space is how we enter the title and the subtitle. So any questions on this title of this book? If you have not used WorldCat much, if you're not a cataloger, or if you haven't looked on here since they did a major update, this was back in the fall, you do need to click on show more information to actually get to the series. If there is a series, we do include that. So on this book, there is no series. If you notice, it would be somewhere here in this neck of the woods. I believe it's above physical description normally. So since there is no series here on the WorldCat record, I am going to assume that there is no series for this book. It's just a monograph. So if there's a series, we do include that in the indexing for this book review. And we're going to do one of those in just a few minutes. So again, that is part of our indexing for CPI. And what we do there is we put a title, if there's a subtitle, and then a period, and then a space, and then a series would go in parentheses. So any questions before we move on regarding this book review? So I don't see any questions, so we'll keep moving forward. So the next thing that we're going to look at is the name of the title for this journal, which of course in this case is Icon, and that's going to go in the rest of the citation information, and that is just like it is in an article. So I'm not going to highlight that today. We're going to talk about that in one of the other sessions. For now, let's look at the name of the reviewer. So on this journal, I don't know if you've noticed on other reviews yet. If you've taken a look at it, great. If not, it's a-okay. We've noticed as a team that there are several instances of how they might enter a name. So on this one, I hope you can see, it might be really small, but up at the top, that is the title of the reviewer. So I would enter that exactly as it appears on this page, right? So it might appear differently on the table of contents. It might appear differently on the cover of the journal. For the Christian Periodical Index, we prefer the review itself as the chief source of information, and that's a LC term for a cataloging term for a book, for a title. So we're going to enter the reviewer's name exactly as it appears here. So we do not search the LC authority file for the reviewer. We're going to enter it exactly as it appears on the review. So in this case, it's going to be Samuel space D period space James. So we don't have to search the authority record for the reviewer. Okay, some people enter that as James, comma, Samuel D. That is not correct. It goes in direct order. So in other words, exactly as it appears on the review, Samuel D. James. So this is a pretty straightforward book review, okay? Any questions before we keep moving? So let's go on to the next review. If there aren't any questions, I can't see the chat. So I hope there aren't any questions. And I'm sure some of the team members can also monitor the chat if there are questions. Feel free to use them in the chat or just go ahead and interrupt. You're not interrupting. I don't mind at all. So let's take a look at another review. So we're going to go on down to page 166. I'm going to skip over this other review. So we're going down to page 166 if you're following along on your computer. And we're going to look at the next review here called Gender Roles and the People of God. And it does have a subtitle, Rethinking What We Were, Taught About Men and Women in the Church. So one thing that I noticed right off the bat on this one is the name of the author on the cover of the book is Matthews with 1 T. Notice, and this is really small, but notice here in the journal it says Alice Matthews with 2 T's. Okay, so which one is correct? Well, let's take a look at the Library of Congress authority. So I'm going to put it in as it is underneath the cover, which was Matthews, comma, Alice with 2 T's. And notice again, I have a reference to the correct one. So Matthews, comma, Alice, comma, 1930. Well, I don't know if the date is correct or not, but let's take a look at the reference just to see. And notice that the name authority file says C, Matthews with 1 T, Matthews, comma, Alice, comma, 1930. So let's take a look at this one and see, do we have the correct one? So here is an authorized heading, and notice that there are several other authorized headings for some of the other works that this person has done. And it looks like she is a Christian author. So right off the bat, I'm going to guess that this is the correct one. But let's take a look at the authorized heading for Matthews, comma, Alice, comma, 1930 dash with 1 T. Notice there's 1 T, not 2. So here is the work that the Library of Congress used to form this LC name authority file for Matthews with 1 T. And the title that they used was A Woman God Can Use. Here's another one that's called Preaching Speaks to Women. And this tells me that this is the correct person. So Matthews with 1 T, comma, Alice, comma, 1930 dash. So that is how I would enter the author's name for this book, which again is Gender Roles and the People of God. So let's take a look at WorldCat now and see what it has to say about gender roles and the people of God. So again, why do I want to look at WorldCat to see the title? So here again, here's the cover of that book. Here's the title. So I want to see if there's anything else in WorldCat. Example, spellings, if there's, a British spelling, which one is correct versus an American spelling. So I would want to enter the title for this book exactly as it is here in WorldCat. Okay, so notice God is with a capital G, and again, space, colon, space between the title and the subtitle. And let's see if there is a series, and I don't see a series. Again, it would be right here at the top. So again, this is a monograph. It's not part of a series. Let's say, a Bible commentary, which would be part of a series. I would want to enter that series after the title. So any questions now on this second review that we're using as an example here? I don't think we looked at the page numbers on the first review that we did. So let's look at this one just to make sure that I get the right number of pages. And it may be small on your screen, but that number right there is 166. And let's scroll down to the end of this review, and it looks like it goes to page 170. So in my indexing for this review, it would be 166-170. There is no space before the hyphen. And I do see lots of indexing where people do put a space there. There is no space. So 166-170. All right, any questions about this second review now?
Hey, Jamie, I just want to point out that the title uses sentence capitalization rather than all major words.
Yes, thank you, Lori. So again, take it exactly as it appears in WorldCat. So as Lori said, that's a sentence formation. Yeah, good point. Thank you, Lori. Okay, so let's take a look now at a different article. And I want to show you, I'm sorry, not an article, a different review. And what I'd like to do is to have you take a look at this, and I'll see if I can put this in the chat. Sarah, would you mind putting the link to the book review of the series in the chat? I don't think I'm able to do that.
Sure.
Thank you so much. So what I want to show you next is a title of a book. It's actually not from this journal. It's a different journal. And this is one that has a series. So as Sarah is pulling that up, I'm going to pull it up on my screen as well so you can see it. And so this is a book review of a commentary. Okay, so you can see this journal is the Journal of Biblical Theology and Ministry, which is one that I have already done the indexing for. Yes, and Sarah, thank you for putting that in the chat. I can see it now. So if you can see the chat on your screen, you're also welcome to go there as well. So here we have the title of the book, which is 2 Corinthians by Ralph T. Martin. And notice that it even tells me in this journal that it's from Word Biblical Commentary number 40. So I'm just going to highlight all of this information and put that into WorldCat and see what comes up. And let's see what the WorldCat record looks like. So here is 2 Corinthians. And notice now there are several different versions of this record. This does happen quite a bit because some libraries like to enter just one. Some people like to catalog it as a series. So, you know, which record do you do? Notice that this one is number 40 in the series, and it's also the second edition of the book. So there would be a first edition in some libraries as well. So do I know the date? Notice that this first record says 2014. The second one is an ebook from 2017. So let's see. I have the 2014 record being reviewed here. So I would need to differentiate that in my search. Okay, so here's the title, 2 Corinthians. And I want to show you this because under the show more information, here is the series. So you can use that Word Biblical Commentary as the series. So this is just an example of a book from a series. And what we're going to do now is to actually allow you to do some indexing. And Sarah, would you mind putting the link to the form in the chat, please? So what we're going to do, we're going to go back now to Icon, Volume 2, Number 1. And let's take a look now at one of these other reviews. So of course, I'm doing this out of order as you would typically do it when you're doing a whole issue. But we're going to look at let's see, we're going to go to page 1. I'm sorry, I can't see the page. I'll know when I get there. Okay, it's page 152. So if you're doing this on your computer as well, we're going to page 152, and we're going to look now at a review of this book here called The Conservative Sensibility. So we're going to give you some time here to do this yourself. If you will, go ahead and click on the link in the chat here for the form. and it should look like this. We have a text template that we use for indexing. There is a web version of this. You can also index in Library Master. So there's several different ways to do this. And yes, Sarah is saying if you want to make a copy of the Google Doc, you're welcome to do this. And this is how you can index this yourself. So I probably don't want to share the screen at this point so that everyone can enter their own. So if you will, scroll down and use a couple of these yourself so that we can see your indexing. And what you might want to do is just put your name at the beginning so that someone else doesn't index over the top of you, okay? So now what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to determine the author's name. So you can see here the name of the author, and you can also go back to the name authority file and figure out the author's name. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed my screen there for just a second. The LC authority file times out very quickly. I think it's 5 minutes. If you don't index something or search there, it indexes, it goes away very quickly. So just a word to the wise on that. So we have the author's name of George F. Will. So if you want to search for that in the name authority file, and I would suggest searching Will, George F. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see the questions in the chat. And if you do have a question about anything as you're practicing, please feel free to unmute yourself. And you can also put that in the chat box as well if you can't unmute. So again, search the name authority file for Will, George F. And on my computer in the name authority file, I'm seeing 2 different names here. And I think what I'll do, I'll start sharing my screen again so that you can see this. So you should be able to see now 2 different versions of Will, George F. Notice that the first one has no names. Notice the second one is Will, George F, but he died in 1955. Now, can dead people write reviews? It's a trick question because we do see things like this that pop up if your journal indexes things more than once. Sometimes journals will reprint things as well. So this is a good example here of looking at the authorized heading to make sure. So we don't have a dead person writing review. This is the very popular George F. Will. So that is the correct form there, Will, George F. So let's take a look now at the text template. I don't see anybody's entries yet. So if you want to do this yourself, feel free to go ahead and do it. Will, George F. Okay, so back to the journal issue here for ICON, and we have the title of The Conservative Sensibility. So now let's go ahead and search for that in WorldCat. So I'm just entering the title just to see, are there any other books written by someone else other than George F. Will? And it doesn't look like it. Yeah, I don't see any others other than right up here at the very top. The first one is the print book. The second one is the audio book. So does everyone see where I'm getting that information? They're both published in 2019. I do want to look at the book record, not the audio book. So let's just make sure on the title, I don't see a subtitle. So sometimes on the cover, there may not be a subtitle, and sometimes on the title page, which again is the chief source of information, there might be a subtitle. In this case, there is not one, or at least there's not one on the WorldCat record. So this one's pretty straightforward now for the title. It's just The Conservative Sensibility. Okay, so I see some people are entering the title there. So no semicolon, no subtitle, anything like that. This one's very straightforward. Okay, so the name of the journal. What is the name of the journal? The name of the journal is Icon, a journal for biblical anthropology. Do you need to enter the subtitle? Somewhat of a trick question. So let's see if Icon has a record in WorldCat. Icon, a journal for biblical anthropology. So it looks like there are 3 records for this, and they all include the subtitle. Notice the spelling. This kind of makes me a little nervous. Kind of makes my eye twitch as a former cataloger. The spelling is different on all 3 of these. Do you notice that? This one is Icon space colon space, lowercase a, lowercase j, capital B, lowercase a. The second one is Icon, no space. Again, it makes my eye twitch just a little bit. Capital letters, A journal, lowercase f, capital B, capital A. The third one, Icon, space, colon, space, and then all lowercase. So which one is correct? Oh goodness, this is a sticky wicket, isn't it? So let's look at this first record. Icon, a journal for capital B, biblical anthropology. Sometimes I look at the libraries who own this, and you can see this one has 56 libraries, 3 different editions, and 74 libraries. So of the 74 libraries who do own this journal, 56 of them have used this record. So that tells me that there's somewhat safety in numbers. This might be the one that I use. I will tell you this too, Sarah will adjust the journal title so that they're all uniform. So as long as you enter your indexing the same way every time, you're going to be a-okay. I do several journals who do have subtitle, and each one of them is different. So Sarah will look at that and she'll make that determination on what is the correct journal. I would use this one because again, it has space colon space, and then we will figure out the capitalization of the right words. Okay, so back to the review template, and David, I'm just using yours here. Looks like you've got the journal right there, so that's great. Make sure that that goes in the journal title. So don't delete the journal. The brackets there, make sure that that stays. Okay, volume, of course, is from the journal, and you can see this one is volume 2. So this actually spells out TWO. Do you enter it that way? No, just put the number, please. So the number 2 would go in the volume. And then the issue is issue 1. So again, the number 1, not spelled out O-N-E. And the pages. So let's look at our pages now. And now I've got to find it again. So we're doing the conservative sensibility, which is on page 152. And where does it stop? So 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157. Okay, so it's 152-157. 157. Again, no space before or after the hyphen. Okay, and do we have a month or a season on this one? Again, let's go back up to the cover. It says spring. So we have a list of abbreviations for months and seasons. And again, this is in the manual, and we'll look at the manual. I just know off the top of my head that this one is SPR. So it's capital S, lowercase p, lowercase r. So again, that would go in the month. We're not entering the year yet. Notice that there is a field for the day. Some journals do actually publish weekly, so we do enter the day on some. This one does not have that though. Again, it only has spring. So that would go in the month or season. And then the year goes in the year field, which is 2020. Okay, now who was the reviewer on this one? So again, we're going back down to page 152. Notice here on the contents, it says Jeremy J. Lloyd. So let's go down to 152 and see, does it actually say Jeremy J. Lloyd? It does. It says Jeremy J. Lloyd, so that we're going to enter it in direct format. So Jeremy space J period space Lloyd, and that is the reviewer. All right, do we have a DOI? I don't see a DOI on this one. So we do have the URL, and so we can enter that URL right here. And this is one of the few times where we actually suggest that you copy and paste that URL directly into the indexing. Okay, so I'm going to copy that address, and you can certainly do that as well. And then David, I don't want to mess you up, but it goes right there in the URL field. Okay, has anyone else done any of the samples here? Yeah, here are some others, great. I don't see a name on this one here on my screen, but that looks good so far. You would just need to enter the rest of the citation information here, the journal, the volume, the issue, and the pages and the season. Okay, Rachel, that looks great. That looks perfect. I don't see a name here under Rachel, but you've got the name and the title and the journal. So keep going. We do want to give you plenty of time to do this. So if you haven't jumped in yet, feel free to go ahead and jump in and use the text review template here. I don't see any questions in the chat. Do we have any questions, Sarah or anybody else?
I haven't seen any yet.
Okay, awesome. Okay, would you like to do another review? Looks like we've got about, what, 17 minutes?
I say let's go for it.
Okay, awesome. Let's go for it. So I'm going to go to the very first review in ICON, which is on page 109. So there we go, page 109. This is a very problematic record, and the team has discussed this in detail. And the reason why it's problematic, there are several reasons. So just on the surface, you know, on the left-hand side, it says it's a book review. It says Andrew David Naselli. We have the name of the book. We have a picture of the book. Okay, let's go back now to the cover of the journal. And notice here in the very top right corner, It says Recovering from Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, reviewed by Andrew Naselli, right? Now let's go to the contents. And I know it's probably really small on your screen, but it's over here on the right-hand side, the first book review, Recovering from Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, reviewed by Andy Naselli. Now, let's go back to page 109. So remember, we talked about the chief source of information that we prefer. You use the article or the review itself as the chief source of information. So for the reviewer on this one, what would you enter? And feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
Andrew David Naselli.
Yes, and I couldn't see who was speaking. Was that Christina?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Christina. You are right. That is correct. So it's Andrew David Naselli. Now, let's look at the title. Is there anything problematic about this? Well, again, I'm a former cataloger. I'm a director now, but I see an and right here, A-N-D, but then on the cover, I see an ampersand. So which one is it? Well, this is where we have to search in WorldCat. Recovering from Biblical Manhood, and I'm just going to put in A-N-D. Okay, Craig, I see your question. If an article / book review happens to appear on an unnumbered page and the surrounding pages are sequential, such that this page is inserted per se, how do you document that pagination? That's an excellent question. I would look at the surrounding pages to determine the pagination. If you can make an informed guess, that would be my answer to that. Anybody else on the team want to jump in here?
That's what I would say. Look at it. I do occasionally have something that starts before numbered pages, and I usually just use little Roman numerals to indicate those pages.
I would do the same exact thing. Anybody else want to jump in? And Sarah says we do occasionally use insert if there are no pages. Yeah. Excellent question, Craig. Glad you're here today. So back to this book now. Here is the one from the article itself. Notice that this one is the book. It says it's the print book from 2020. This first record was the audio book. And do you see the difference now between the and, A-N-D, and the ampersand? So in this case, I would use the ampersand because that is how it appears in WorldCat. Now, the cover of a book is not technically the chief source of information. Anybody who's a cataloger knows that the title page is the chief source of information. So I'm guessing that some good cataloger, and it was probably someone at the Library of Congress, used the title page for this one to look at this one to determine that it's Recovering from Biblical Manhood, ampersand, womanhood. Okay, so let's take a look at the record. Here's that title again, it's got the ampersand. So that is how I would enter that title for my indexing of this review. Let's see, is there a series? No, I have a genre statement, physical description, etc. So I would say that this is the correct title. So I would enter it exactly as it would appear right here in WorldCat with the ampersand. Again, in the title here, space, colon, space. That's exactly how it appears in WorldCat. And that's exactly how you should enter it in your indexing of this book. So is anyone tackling this in our text template? I don't see anybody doing this one yet, and that's okay. You don't have to. We're just wanting to give you plenty of time to actually do this if you would like. Okay, back to the review. Okay, and I'll put review in air quotes because this one is really interesting. Notice that it starts on page 108 or 109 I would enter a 109 because this is just really a blank page or an illustration if you want to get technical about it, the book review. So I would enter the pagination as 109. And where does it end? Notice that this one is very strange as a book review. So when I look at this as the book review editor, I'm thinking, is this really a review? Because I don't typically see an illustration on the right-hand side on this page in a book review, nor do I see a table. And this isn't the only table. I think there are a couple of tables in this one. So this is a very lengthy review. It's so lengthy that you notice I'm still scrolling. I think it's about 50 pages, if I remember correctly. So we're getting towards the end. And there's the end of that one. So it's 109-151. Okay, so over 40 pages. And yes, Carrie Beth says that she sees a lot of bibliographical references. I do too. So all of that to say, I would enter this as a review and an article because this is very deep for just a traditional book review. This goes way deeper than most book reviews do. So what I would do for this one is enter the review plain and simple, but then go back and enter it as an article. Okay, so do you see that there are more illustrations, more bibliographical references, as Carrie Beth pointed out? So too lengthy to be just a traditional book review. So it might sound strange to you to enter it this way, but that is how we would prefer for any type of review that's more than, you know, I hate to put a number out there, but anytime you see something this long, this is a scholarly article. So that's why I didn't want to tackle this one just right off the bat today. So enter it as a review and an article. So questions about this one? Has anyone ever done one of these?
You mean reviews that are also articles?
Correct.
Yes, I've had those occasionally.
I have too. And again, Lori says that we're going to show you how to enter this one as an article in our next session next week. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. Okay, question from Jan. What do you do when the title of the review is a question and not exactly the title of the book? That's a very good question. So I would determine the title of the book. So we enter that in the review. Good question. So if you have a specific example of something, I'd be willing to take a look at it. But if it's truly a review, we're not wanting to know the name of the article about the review, if that makes sense. We're wanting to get the exact title of the book.
Jamie, one more
Yes.
thing, if I was entering it as an article and a review,
Mhm.
and the title of the review is different than the title of the book,
Yes,
when
yes,
I'm
good question.
indexing it as an article, I would make that the title of the article.
Yes,
But
and
we'll
is
get
that
into
your
that more next
question?
week.
Is that your question, Jan? So in this case, the title is exactly the title of the book, other than the point I made about spelling out and versus the ampersand. It does happen. I do see that where it would be different. And so, yes, we will talk about this next week. Other questions? Did anyone tackle this in our review template? Yes, let's see, Phyllis is doing it right now. So again, make sure that you get the, Phyllis, make sure that you get the spelling exactly as it appears in WorldCat. So I see that you've got uppercase B, uppercase M, uppercase W. Make sure that you get it directly from WorldCat, just like that, with the ampersand and the space colon space between the title and the subtitle. Yes, yes. Anyone else doing this one? Yeah, I see some others here. If Carla did the George Will, and Carla, that looks great. Did I miss anyone else doing this? Tanisha, that looks great for the George Will.
I just want to point out that for the volumes and issues, you should use Arabic numerals. If the volume is written in Roman numerals, don't do that. If it's written out like issue 1 ONE, don't use the Arabic numeral 1.
Yes, thank you for reinforcing that, Lori. So Mary exactly has exactly as you have it here. So that's volume 2, issue 1. That is perfect. Right, some of you didn't put your name. So whoever did this one right here above Rachel, just make sure that you do the volume and the issue and the pages, all of that citation information.
Jamie,
got about-
did we
I'm sorry,
check
go ahead,
the
Sylvia.
did we check the author's name in LC Authorities?
I don't think we did. That's a good point. Thank you. So yeah, let's search for Amy Bird. I don't think we did that. So thank you, Carrie Beth. And you see what I mean about it timing out so fast. So Bird, comma, AIMEE. That's how it appeared in the journal. Okay, so yes, here is the author's name. So that is Bird, comma, Amy, comma, 1975 dash. So this is an open date, meaning that she is alive. So we leave it exactly as that. Sometimes I see a space before the hyphen, no space before the hyphen, okay? So exactly as it appears here in the LC Authority record, Bird, comma, space, Amy, comma, space, 1975 dash. So if you want to throw that into our text template for the, yeah, just like what Rachel has here, Bird, comma, Amy, comma, 1975 dash. That looks great. And there's Phyllis. So Bird, comma, and it's AIMEE, comma, space, 1975 dash. And whoever did this one, that's good. That looks great. Okay, so we've got about 2 minutes before we need to go. Are there any more questions before we have to go? Christina, no worries, good to see you. Any other questions before we go for today? Again, we're looking forward to having you next Friday at the same time, 2 o'clock Eastern. I'm not seeing any other questions. Anybody else want to unmute and ask a question before our time is up for today? Thank you so much, Becky. I'm glad that you learned something. We're trying to just reinforce, and for anybody who's new, we're trying to just get you on the right path for indexing a book review. And later, an article. We'll talk about that next week. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, Doug. It's good to see all of you. Hope to see you next Friday at the same time. I'll turn it back over to Sarah or Carrie Beth.
All right. Well, thanks, y'all. Well, this is all we have. So y'all have a good weekend.